order after Donald Trump's sweeping election win.
You can't love your country only when you win.
What next for the man soon to hold his office? We take a look at Donald Trump's priorities and who could be in his top team. The thawing of relations, President Putin sends his congratulations as the world prepares for a Trump return.
Also to come, 3 people are charged in connection with the death of the singer Payne in Argentina. And we will take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Good evening. We'll start with breaking news, and Prince William has described the past year as brutal as he reflected on the impact on his family of his wife and father being diagnosed with cancer. In a rare and surprisingly personal interview, the heir to the throne spoke of his own annus horribilis, describing it as probably the hardest year of his life. Well, he was speaking to reporters in Cape Town on a visit for his annual Earthshot Awards, from where our royal correspondent, Rhiannon Mills, sent us this.
I've shook your hand 3 times now.
Cape Town was always going to be a significant trip for Prince William, his first overseas since the King and the Princess of Wales were diagnosed with cancer. But only now has he admitted just how tough it's been. Honestly, it's been dreadful, he said. It's probably been the hardest year in my life. So trying to get through everything else and keep everything on track has been really difficult. But I'm so proud of my wife, I'm proud of my father for handling the things that they have done. But from a personal family point of view, it's been brutal.
Although I finished chemotherapy.
In September, Kate announced that she'd finished her preventative chemotherapy after a year that has clearly taken its toll on the family. But William's admission is even more extraordinary when you consider the years of upset he endured around the death of his mother. His openness drawing comparisons with one of his grandmother's most personal speeches.
1992 is not a year on which I shall look back with undiluted pleasure. In the words of one of my more sympathetic correspondents, it has turned out to be an annus horribilis.
The fact that he's had to do this trip alone is a reminder of Kate's ongoing recovery. Ahead of his Earthshot Awards on Wednesday, he had nothing but praise for her.
She's doing really well, thanks, and hopefully she's watching tonight and sort of cheering me on. But no, she's been amazing this whole year, and I know she'll be really keen to see it tonight be a success.
We love you. We love you.
The public support for both of them was seen again as he visited Calc Harbour.
To me, I just think it demonstrates his commitment to Africa, to South Africa. It's not easy, anyone travelling away from their family, and particularly at this time, it's difficult.
He's amazing, incredible, incredible. It's just a pity Kate didn't come as well.
Buoyed up by a week of talking about his environmental work, the Prince also shared his thoughts on what it means to be Prince of Wales, admitting he doesn't necessarily like more responsibility, but likes the freedom his role brings him to build something like Earthshot, using his platform to do something genuinely meaningful. From everything that Prince William's been saying, you get the sense that he is looking forward to and trying as much as possible to get back to a sense of normality, where the focus isn't just on what's happening in their personal lives. But it's also been abundantly clear that Kate and the kids have never been far from the front of his mind.
No shrimp whatsoever. I'm allergic to shrimp.
He has seemed more relaxed this tour. You get the sense this year has given him a different perspective on the focus of his work and, most importantly, making time for family. Rhiannon Mills, Sky.
Well, Rhiannon joins us now live from Cape Town. So, Rhiannon, why and how significant is this as a moment?
Well, we often talk, don't we, about how royal family members are very private about their private lives. And this year, of course, has been slightly different with those cancer diagnoses. But I think for Prince William, he's always had a very firm line when it comes to what he wants to share and not share about Kate and the children. So to hear him speaking so openly, so candidly, was certainly extraordinary. Of course, Kate has already shared with us how difficult it's been for them as a family unit. She's done those 2 videos. But I suspect there are many people out there, partners who are helping their own loved ones through cancer diagnosis, who will probably greatly appreciate the fact that he has come out there and said, look, it is hard. It is really brutal when you're trying to support somebody that you love. It has to be said, this week he has been really upbeat. Now, whether that is because Kate now, of course, has finished her course of chemotherapy, or whether it's because actually he's just been really buoyed up by all the enthusiasm around the Earthshot Prize, we don't know. But I think it certainly relaxed him in terms of what he wanted to share today when he was talking to reporters. And I think also what it's reinforced in my mind is actually you've had 2 big life events for him at the moment. You've had him becoming heir to the throne in the last 2 years, also the cancer diagnosis. And I think that's really reinforced in his mind what matters the most.
Absolutely. OK, Rhiannon, in Cape Town for now. Thank you for that.
Good evening from Washington. I'm Yalda Hakim. Well, as the world waits to see what Donald Trump will do with his second term in office tonight, the message from President Biden was pretty clear. The transition of power will be peaceful and orderly. Addressing the nation for the first time since Trump's sweeping election win, he called on Americans to bring down the temperature, saying the will of the people always prevails. Sky's U.S. correspondent Mark Stone was there.
From the Oval Office in the People's House, President Biden emerged, even managing a spring in his step, to face the music, to respect the voters' decision, and to salute the process.
The people vote and choose their own leaders, and they do it peacefully. And we're in a democracy. The will of the people always prevails. Yesterday, I spoke with President-elect Trump to congratulate him on his victory. And I assured him that I'd direct my entire administration to work with his team to ensure a peaceful and orderly transition.
It was intentionally pointed. There was no orderly transition from Donald Trump 4 years ago, but there was little hint of bitterness at such a defeat.
We accept the choice the country made. I've said many times, you can't love your country only when you win. You can't love your neighbor only when you agree. Yesterday, I also spoke with Vice President Harris. She's been a partner and a public servant. She ran an inspiring campaign, and everyone got to see something that I learned early on to respect so much, her character.
Frustration, though, there was, that the voters did not see his administration's achievements.
You know, we're leaving behind the strongest economy in the world. I know people are still hurting, but things are changing rapidly. Together, we've changed America for the better. Now we have 74 days to finish the term, our term. Let's make every day count.
And so beyond the body blow that this moment clearly is for him, for his administration, he now wants to complete the journey, to push through policy, to protect his legacy. On this day 4 years ago, this was the scene outside the White House. Jubilation at Biden's win. While President Trump, on the golf course that day, refused to accept he'd lost. There was no Rose Garden moment.
Settle down, guys. You all right?
Now we will see a repeat of this, November 2016, when Barack Obama welcomed the Trump we didn't then know into the Oval Office after his shock election victory. It was left to Biden's press secretary to field the obvious question he won't face.
Does the president have any regrets about when he chose to leave the race?
Does he feel any sense of responsibility for the outcome?
So does he have any regrets?
In which way? Any regrets in
How it all played out?
I mean, I said this at the top. This was not the outcome that our team had wanted.
That question, had he stepped aside earlier, would more time, a different candidate, have made the difference? We will never know. Mark Stone, Sky News, at the White House.
Well, that was the message there from the outgoing President Joe Biden. But what of the man who will soon hold his office? Well, Sky's James Matthews reports now on Donald Trump's policy priorities and who could make up his top team. Have a look.
In a house by the beach, he's been busy. Voted into office, the president-elect is working from home. In between calls from world leaders, Donald Trump is drafting a presidency, its policy and personnel.
We are going to deflate inflation.
We're going to drill, baby, drill. No tax on tips. The largest deportation program in American history.
I will end the war in Ukraine, stop the chaos in the Middle East.
On policy, foreign and domestic, enacting the promises of the campaign trail is the task ahead. Team selection comes first.
Susie and Chris, the job you did. Susie, come here.
Susie Wiles, the campaign manager who stood on the victory stage, is seen as a front-runner to be Donald Trump's chief of staff. She would be the first female to occupy that position. Speculation over a presidential team broadens to include names from Trump's political past and the influencers who shaped his comeback. None more influential than Elon Musk, the billionaire who put millions into the campaign and got put in the family photo. What's in it for him is the question to be answered. Joe Grogan was once part of Donald Trump's Domestic Policy Council. As the transition of power begins, he says the second-time president will learn from mistakes first time round.
He did make some personnel selections that turned out to not be ideal, and he hired some people that were very disloyal and were not in it for the success of the country or for him, and frankly thought that they were more important than the President of the United States. People who were leaking, people who were writing books while they were working for him. And I think he's going to be much more careful this time.
As America absorbs news of political change, its implications stretch far beyond. This was a group of migrants in Mexico heading for the US border. Trump's stated plan is for a mass deportation of migrants who've already made the trip.
Trump said he was going to remove all Latinos from the United States, a massive deportation. So now it's going to be harder to get in.
At Mar-a-Lago, the word from inside is of a different Donald Trump. Sources close to Donald Trump say there's been little to no talk of the prosecutors who've brought cases against him. The bitterness has gone, they say, partly because the law benefits him in terms of the non-prosecution of a president. But they also say that generally he feels better about everything, buoyed as he is by the election results. The scale of victory has changed his mood as he contemplates change in America. James Matthews, Sky News, at Mar-a-Lago in Florida.
Well, in an interview with NBC this evening, Donald Trump has spoken about the pledge made during his campaign for mass deportations of some groups of immigrants. Pressed on how much the plan would cost, he said it's not a question of a price tag, but stressed that his plan was targeted at criminal gangs, not at those wanting to work for companies in the United States. Well, let's go straight to our correspondent, Shingi Mararike, who joins me now from Arizona near the U.S. border with Mexico. Shingi, good to see you. I mean, immigration was one of the issues that Americans said was top on their minds when they went to the polls. And it's certainly top of Donald Trump's mind this evening when he was asked about immigration and, of course, the mass deportation that he's promised.
Yeah, that's right, Yalda. Donald Trump now has his mandate, and so much of that mandate hinges on immigration. In that NBC interview, he talked in typically strident manner about the issue. He was saying that he would make the border strong and powerful, and then he went on to say that he would carry out the mass deportations he promised, going on to then say that it didn't matter about the price tags, talking about murderers and criminal gangs, again in that typical Trump fashion. And beneath the rhetoric is the reality, the very concrete reality you can see behind me. We're in Nogales, a town that spans the border. It straddles both Mexico on one side and then Arizona on the other side where we are. There is hundreds of miles of fencing, and in the last year, record numbers of people have made the crossing illegally. That is a reality that the Democrats have failed to get a handle on, and they've also failed to get a handle on the actual messaging around it as well, which is why Donald Trump was successful in this election. That plan around mass deportations, around bringing in the National Guard, like Donald Trump has said, presents logistical challenges, it presents financial challenges. Despite that, Donald Trump has cut through, and he has cut through with demographics that you perhaps maybe would not expect him to have done so. So here, over the course of the last week, we've spoken to a number of Latin American voters, including a man today whose wife is from the Mexican side of the border. He is from this side of the border, and he spoke to us about the fact that he thought Donald Trump would be the man to get a handle on immigration. And we now know that those sorts of sentiments are what pushed him into the White House and will define the first part of his presidency.
Shingi, thank you very much for bringing us up to date there. Well, events here in Washington will, of course, reverberate around the world, and it really was no surprise that Vladimir Putin chose today to make a major address in Sochi. The Russian president offered his congratulations to Donald Trump, and he also said he welcomed ideas to end the war in Ukraine. Sky's Moscow correspondent Ivor Bennett was there.
Last time around, there was a budding bromance. Smiles, handshakes, even a full-blown summit. At a ski resort near Sochi, signs that could be rekindled and that relations could start to thaw, as Vladimir Putin offered his congratulations to Donald Trump, along with some rare praise.
His behaviour during the assassination attempt, that impressed me. He is a courageous man. A person shows their true colours in these moments. He acquitted himself admirably as a man.
Perhaps it's no surprise given Trump's comments on the campaign trail.
I think Zelensky's the greatest salesman in history.
And his criticism of US military aid to Ukraine. If he does reduce support, Kyiv will struggle on the battlefield and could be forced into negotiations with a favourable outcome for Moscow. But others here aren't holding their breath that Donald Trump will be true to his word.
We all remember his words that he was supposed to propose something in order to solve the Ukrainian crisis, even before his inauguration. Of course, there was a little bit over-exaggeration that he would be able to do it overnight. Certainly there's nothing that can heal this problem overnight.
Kamala Harris suggested Vladimir Putin will eat Donald Trump for lunch. What do you make of that? Is that true?
Vladimir Putin does not eat people.
Proof, it seems, will be in the pudding. The Kremlin is cautious about a second Trump presidency because in their eyes, the first didn't live up to expectations. Warm words, they say, weren't matched by warm actions. Sanctions increased. The US sent weapons to Ukraine. So unlike last time, Russia's not popping any champagne corks. But others in Europe have been, like Hungary's Viktor Orban.
We opened champagne, but I was in Kyrgyzstan when Donald Trump won the election, and you have different traditions there, so we were happily relying on the vodka supply.
Hungary's the black sheep in this family, though. Its NATO colleagues are nervous.
If Russia would be successful in Ukraine, you would have an emboldened Russia at our border, so that will be a threat not only to Europe, European part of NATO, but also to the United States.
For now in Russia, the bromance is on ice, but maybe not for long. Ivor Bennett, Sky News, Krasnaya Polyana.
Well, let's go to our chief correspondent, Stuart Ramsey, who joins me from Kyiv now this evening. And Stuart, no doubt there are so many nervous and anxious Ukrainians waiting to see how Donald Trump's foreign policy, certainly as far as Ukraine is concerned, evolves.
Exactly. President Zelensky, I think, is trying to sound optimistic. He's saying he's talking to Donald Trump, that the relationship with the United States will go on and can be built on. And effectively what he's saying is the money will keep coming and they'll be able to keep fighting. I've been talking to friends here. They tell me that they are very, very worried, very scared. There's a gloomy atmosphere. Social media, the media generally, politicians are all very, very concerned about what is going to happen next. And I think what plays into that is that they really have no clue how Donald Trump is going to act. Whether, as he says, he can bring this to a close quickly. The only way that can happen is if the two sides come together and talk. Neither have indicated that that's likely with any of the proposals that have been on the table so far. Most in Ukraine, some of whom would definitely like the idea of this coming to an end, definitely believe that if they're forced to the table, then Ukraine will have to accept conditions considered unacceptable by the government here at the moment and would definitely be advantageous to the Russians. So a gloomy atmosphere here, waiting to see what Donald Trump does. It's virtually the world seems to be waiting to see what the future president is going to do on a whole range of issues, but Ukraine is really obviously one of the big ones.
Yeah, very much so. Stuart, thank you so much. Well, let's bring in our US correspondent, Mark Stone, who's at the White House for us this evening. And Mark, I mean, we're just speaking there to Stuart about the world waiting and watching to see what Donald Trump does, especially when it comes to foreign policy. I mean, the first 4 years of Donald Trump from 2016 was quite a ride, and I think many people are expecting the same over the course of the next 4 years.
Yeah, some white water maybe to come in the ride over the next 4 years. Chaos surrounded Donald Trump in his last presidency, and I think we can probably expect some of that this time around as well. You know, the New York Times described the end of the last Trump term. They said the great experiment is over. Well, it wasn't over. That was an experiment. Maybe the next 4 years is the real deal. Winning politics is all about building coalitions. And Donald Trump lost last time because he was unable to appeal beyond his base. But this time around, with remarkable success and to the astonishment of the liberal elite, frankly, he was able to build a multiracial working class coalition, all of whom believe that he is looking out for them and will deliver for them. And crucially, they did not believe that Scranton Joe, that working class guy that he once was, but a career politician, Joe Biden, and his successor, they did not believe that they would be able to deliver for them over the next 4 years. And of course, Kamala Harris failed to differentiate herself from Joe Biden. Ultimately, the majority of people in America chose change, and they chose Donald Trump.
Mark, thank you so much. And of course, as Mark said, we will be following all the developments here, not just in the weeks to come, but over the course of the next 4 years. And America, over the last 36 hours, has been processing what a Donald Trump 2.0 will look like. I think the world will be processing it, and we will be watching very closely. For now, Kamali, back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Yalda. Let's get more now on a developing story this evening. And prosecutors in Argentina have announced a significant update in their investigation into the death of Liam Payne. Let's bring in our correspondent, Daniel Henry, who is here with me for more. Daniel, good evening to you. So what more do we know?
Well, 3 people have been charged in connection with the death of Liam Payne. People will remember that the singer-songwriter from One Direction died on the 16th of October in Argentina following a fall from the 3rd floor of a balcony of a hotel that he was staying at. And what we know now is that 3 people have been charged in connection with that. The charges read as abandonment of a person followed by death and supply of facilitation of narcotics. They say that one of these people they believe was with Liam on a daily basis. And they believe that another person was a hotel employee, and the other person they're accusing of carrying drugs at the time. A short statement from the prosecutor saying that Liam Payne was not fully conscious and experiencing a state of noticeable decrease of consciousness at the time of the fall. There were remnants of drug and alcohol found in his room after the investigators got in there after Liam had died. 3 weeks ago this happened, and 3 weeks on, 3 people have been charged in connection with his death.
Daniel, thank you for the update. Now, as expected, the Bank of England has cut the base rate of interest to 4.75%, its second cut this year. But that good news for borrowers was tempered by the suggestion that Rachel Reeves's first budget could lead to high inflation over the next 12 months. That means another rate cut before the end of this year is unlikely, with a knock-on effect for mortgage payers and business owners. Our business and economics correspondent, Paul Kelso, reports now from the Bank of England.
After the budget, the reckoning. The Bank of England meeting for the first time since Rachel Reeves announced the return of tax and spend.
A week of monetary policy, a few other things going on this week as well.
Measures they think here will increase inflation, though not enough to prevent a second cut to interest rates in 3 months.
All right. We think that the most likely profile of inflation going forwards, yes, it will go up a bit, but we've got really good news. It's come down more than we thought it would, so we're starting at a lower level. That is why we have cut interest rates today.
Consumers and homeowners will welcome a cut, but the budget and perhaps the American election means we may be waiting longer for the next one.
The governor was positive that this latest rate cut is in keeping with a gradual but steady path towards lower interest rates, but he wouldn't say how fast or how far they would fall. The markets are much clearer, having been almost certain that rates would be cut again in December. They now think there's just a 1 in 5 chance.
Markets had expected rates to fall to 3.75% by the end of next year, the blue line here. Since the budget, the red line, they think they'll stay higher for longer. That's not what Glenn wants to hear as he comes off a 5-year fixed-rate mortgage with repayments likely to double.
It's difficult because there is that uncertainty over what's going to happen and, you know, do we do a new 2-year fixed mortgage? Do we do a new 5-year fix to give us some more certainty over the next 5 years? And I think it's just become increasingly uncertain.
It's not just households counting the cost of the budget. Employers are absorbing an increase in national insurance that will add £100,000 to the wage bill at this hotel, a price that may be paid in jobs.
We're ultimately going to have to swallow the majority of that. You know, we can't just increase our room costs because our costs have gone up because, you know, guests won't stay. So we've, you know, got to look at making some tough decisions about headcount.
The biggest economic shock may yet come from the US. Andrew Bailey says he's prepared.
We worked very closely with the members of the first Trump administration. You know, we had constructive and very, good relations. I fully expect, that to be the case again.
Back home, households craving certainty will hope he's right. Paul Kelso, Sky News.
Well, earlier this week, the Prime Minister said he would make it his personal mission to smash the people smuggling gangs as he, like his predecessors, tries to deal with irregular migration. Well, at a summit of European leaders in Budapest today, he unveiled a series of deals with Balkan states aimed at doing just that. But given more than 3,000 people have crossed the channel in small boats in the last fortnight alone, will it make a difference? Sky's communities correspondent Lisa Holland reports.
The early hours of Thursday morning and dozens more asylum seekers are brought ashore in Dover. The Prime Minister says he has a plan to stop small boat crossings, believing the solution lies in smashing the smuggling gangs operating in the countries the migrants pass through on their way to Britain. To that end, Keir Starmer in Hungary has been signing agreements on intelligence sharing with Western Balkan nations, including Kosovo and Serbia, pointing to a similar deal with Albania, which has already paid dividends.
I'm absolutely determined that with agreements like this, we can take these gangs down.
A lot of people is come in London.
The Western Balkans is a key route which almost 100,000 migrants used last year. Mohammed has just made that journey, arriving in the UK by small boat a month ago. He is from Afghanistan, but says the smuggling gangs are a complex web of criminals to crack.
When we came here from Afghanistan, we were told over the phone to go with this person. We didn't understand it at first. When we reached the station in France, a man spoke to us about transport in a car and then brought us here by boat. Each country has its own agent. The one who brought us from Afghanistan was also a foreigner. For example, Turkey had its own agent and Bulgaria had its own agent.
More than 3,000 asylum seekers have arrived on small boats across the Channel in the last 2 weeks alone. The new Labour government is under pressure to provide a viable alternative to the now defunct Rwanda plan.
The trouble is that you have to convince the migrants that they don't want to come to the UK, because the gangs are only there because the migrants want to come to the UK. Make the UK a place that you don't want to come to, the gangs will disappear.
Stopping the small boats was a key political target for successive Conservative Prime Ministers. Keir Starmer has now pinned his personal authority on finding success where others have failed. Lisa Holland, Sky News.
I shall turn now to the royal family. And while Prince William was speaking in South Africa, the King has been meeting medalists from this year's Olympics in Paris. Well, members of Team GB and Paralympics GB were invited to a reception at Buckingham Palace. And the King revealed his own fitness regime, saying that he worked out twice a day, doing squats and using a pull-up bar. Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview. We're joined by the journalist and broadcaster Jenny Kleeman and the PR consultant Alex Dean. Guys, thanks for being with us. Among the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of the Financial Times. Its headline, Biden tells America to lower political heat. We'll be right back.